they're considering $40 for Marathon. And this has got to be a bit of a conundrum for these fine folks, right, at Sony. Because obviously we know Concord was 40 and it flopped, and Helldivers 2 was 40 and it's one of the biggest games of the year. So what lesson to take? Everybody you ask is going to tell you something different. Somebody's going to tell you, oh, it was because Concord was woke. And somebody else is going to tell you, no, it's because there was too much competition. You know, who knows? Probably a little blend of all this shit. Bungie's not making a game like Concord. They're making a class-based shooter that is more, it's like an extraction shooter. They say it's very similar to Escape from Tarkov with a Bungie twist. The only thing that I know that could be the twist is that if you saw the trailer from ages ago, it's something to do with oxygen amount. So instead of the environment closing in, your oxygen canister is draining. And obviously, if you lose it, you die. And so I don't know if they're making kind of an extraction shooter with this kind of oxygen draining mechanic as sort of their twist. I have no clue. But these extraction games in Tarkov certainly tend to be bigger in terms of just scope than a hero shooter. And so I can understand why maybe they would consider charging for it, even though certainly Warzone is not as tactical as Tarkov or realistic as Tarkov. That is free. Tarkov was going to be free when they came out of their early access, but I think they've since said, no, we're still going to charge $50 for it. Awesome Tatum says, though, this is a big mistake. I think Helldiver's success, he says, is making executives friggin' blind. Yeah, I get it, but I also get that maybe Helldivers 2 is making them blind, but shouldn't at the same time Concord's failure, like abysmal failure, make them go, wait a minute? But they may not have the funding to say we're going to make this thing and give it away for free. It may not have been built from the ground up as a service-based game. Or maybe it's like the Destiny games, which it's going to start as a paid title, and they're just going to follow that path. They're going to go paid, and then, you know, a year later, if it's a success, 6 months, whatever, they'll flip a few switches, and it becomes something that you get for free, but there's lots of microtransactions. I assume that's the plan, but, you know, I think they've got a lot to prove at this point, given that I think a lot of PlayStation gamers blame them for the fact that we're not currently playing or gearing up to play Last of Us Factions. Because the word is, sounds like it's pretty much confirmed, is that it was Bungie and their knowledge of the space, knowledge being in quotes potentially, that caused Sony to go, maybe we shouldn't be continuing to fund the Last of Us Factions. I don't have the real data on that. I'm just telling you what I've heard. I've heard that. I've heard they closed Factions down because eventually somebody on the team woke up and said, hey, wait a minute. You mean if we make this a service game, we got to keep working on it? That means we're going to be consumed for the next 5 years, the whole team. It's like, yeah, that's what a service game is. Interesting. It's kind of like having a Broadway show and then being like, oh, we got to do it more than once. It's like, yeah, it's a live show. That's kind of what you do. The other thing that's interesting related to Bungie, and I thought this was harsh, but if it's true, good. Bungie had a lawyer that has since left the building. He said this. His name is Don McGowan. He says he's glad Sony is inflicting some discipline. That's his quote. Inflicting some discipline on Bungie. It's exactly what was needed. Much though it pains me to say this, it appears, he says, that Sony's inflicting some discipline on my former colleagues may have forced them to fix the things that were wrong with their game. To be clear, he continues, I'm not talking about the layoffs, idiot. Yeah. I'm talking about forcing them to get their heads out of their asses and focus on things like implementing a method of new player acquisition, not just doing fan service for the fans in the Bungie C-suite, and running the game like a business. Good. I still have friends in that environment, and I'd like them to keep their jobs. He says, this is the future I thought the company should embrace after the acquisition. A studio, not an independent company. But there were a lot of egos for whom it was important to pretend that nothing would change. He says, I remember sitting there during the deal saying, do you think Sony describes this as them getting paid $3.6 billion for the right to have no input into what we do at all? That's exactly what a lot of people thought. Well, again, the deal that was shared with the public was that. It was like, you guys continue to be Bungie, but the minute you miss these markers, these milestones of finance issues, we take over. And it looks like that's exactly what has happened. And I guess at least this guy, this ex-lawyer of Bungie, Don McGowan, is happy to hear it. So, I don't follow Bungie all that much. I do think the Marathon trailer they showed looked interesting. I do think an Escape from if you don't know Escape from Tarkov, and I won't play it because it's way too fucking hardcore. What do you mean, Twisted Sith? Why am I always on the side of corporate greed? I'm on the side of what sounds like mismanagement at Bungie and Sony coming in and saying, guys, we can't do this. Corporate greed, if you're saying that Sony, gave them the opportunity and the deal. It said, you guys have all the freedom you want. The only way you'll stop having the freedom is if you fuck it up. Well, they fucked it up. That's not Sony's fault. That's not corporate greed's fault. That was the deal they made. But Tarkov, I won't play it because it's too simmy and hardcore for me. But it's an open world MMO-ish, but not like World of Warcraft, extraction shooter, where you've got numerous types of missions and then you try to get out before the time runs out or you die or whatever. Sony doesn't really have anything like that. It sounds like it's a smarter shooter than what a lot of people are used to. And so in that, perhaps if Bungie goes more that route, I get how this could be a big deal for those guys. But I don't know if $40 makes sense. But, again, maybe maybe $40 and then PS Plus for a month. And then, if it doesn't take hold, flip the switch, go to free to play. I don't know. But I do think it looks a lot more interesting than Concord ever did, and then in that time since, I've learned that what you'll see in a second is like this oxygen tank, like we were talking earlier, that they wear. And that's kind of the thing that really gives it the twist. See that 37, it's counting down. I don't know if you're constantly having to sort of deal with it or if it's like, because if it's always counting down and it's a constant obsession, I think I'd get annoyed. But if it's kind of more like Fortnite or something where, every 3 minutes you're going to lose a percentage of your oxygen or, and if you run or if you, do certain kinds of maneuvers, it takes more oxygen. So there's a risk reward. But if you do things that push your adrenaline up, like get headshots and stuff, maybe it gives you a bonus amount of oxygen. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they could do with that idea. If I am fully understanding the concept of this. And so I am curious, but Bungie's not Bungie anymore, right? Just like Rare isn't Rare anymore. So it's not like you're going to get the guys who made Halo great, most of them, if not all of them. It doesn't mean the people who were there aren't great, but even the people who made Destiny great, a bunch of those people have left. So who the fuck knows? In fact, I want to say this game is now being directed by one of the either Valorant or Apex Legend directors, because the dude who was directing it was forced to leave Bungie because of some kind of bad behavior, inappropriate behavior. I don't know if they were ever specific,